Thank you for joining us today. And I'll call the May 16th, 2024 meeting of the Police Advisory and Oversight Board into order. Let's begin with the introduction of commission members.
Conrad Thomas.
Todd Smellberg.
Lucretia King.
Joanna Johnson.
Dave Hoganson.
Tanya Graywind.
Scott Paul.
All right. The next item is to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion is carried. Next item is approving the minutes from the April 11th, 2024 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion is carried. The next item is going to be voting in the chair and vice chair, but I'd like to just take a moment, if I could. And I'd like to say thank you to the board for allowing me the opportunity to serve as chair. And I appreciate each and every one of you for volunteering your time to be on this board. I think the board is in its early stages, and I can see how this board can grow and evolve over time. And I know there's been some talk to what we do and what we don't do as a board, but I think these meetings do matter. Now, we have had an opportunity to learn alongside the community more details of what the Fargo police are doing in our community. We've learned about our officers, their training, and policing standards. We have also learned areas that still need work and areas of improvement. But there are three things I'd like to highlight from my tenure as chair. So first is mental health. From our brown bag, I can say that mental health has been an important topic for this board. And since the start of this board, we have witnessed the development of the Fargo Police Mental Health Co-Respondent Program. And this grew out of the concern for the number of mental health calls for service on any given day. And it's been wonderful to see the Fargo community working together to create a plan to improve mental health outcomes in our city. And we've also learned how the Fargo Police Department has put efforts into supporting the mental health of our officers with the officer wellness programs and the mental health supports. These are important and they matter. And I can say I'm pleased with the direction we are going as making mental health a priority in our community. Second, getting out into the community. Now, not only were we bringing information to the community, we've been able to hear from the community and have had meetings within our community. Just a couple of months ago at the public health, we learned how the Fargo Police has worked to improve the living situations for residents at the harbors so that they can feel safe in their own homes. Regarding our meetings, we've added to our agenda the community questions to help answer questions that we as the board are hearing in our community. We've had listening session, town hall meetings, and we extended our public comments to 3 minutes. And lastly, transparency. We've been able to bring body cam footage to the forefront during our presentations of critical incidents and complaints. We've had detailed discussions of these presentations on these incidents, and we're given the opportunity to ask some pretty tough questions. And in response to the critical incidents, we have suggested that the Fargo Police participate in the voluntary CRITAC program, a collaborative reform initiative from the Community-Oriented Policing Services, or COPS, which is through the Department of Justice. This review is underway, and we anticipate the review and any suggestions they may have. But we've also learned about the heroic efforts of our officers during an ambush. And we lost an officer, Officer Wallin, who died in the line of duty in July 2023. We've reviewed annual data, including those with demographics, and we learned where and when demographics are being tracked. And we have inquired about how we can better track demographics moving forward. and I think the chief will speak to this later. And I know we are a new board, but we have done some meaningful things. And I think we're on the right track, and I look forward to what comes next. So thank you. All right. We're going to work on voting in the chair and the vice chair now. This is an action item, Nancy, so do we need to get a motion?
Yes,
Okay.
you would make a call for the nominations for the chair, and then you, if somebody wants to put a slate forward for chair and vice chair, if there are no other nominations, you could close the slate for those nominations. So it's up to you if you want to proceed together or separately.
Okay. So do we need to, my question is,
You would just make a call for the
Okay.
nominations
All
for
right.
the chair
Okay.
and for the vice chair if you
Okay.
choose.
all right, can I get a call for the discussion of the next chair?
I'll make a motion, but before I do that, I just want to thank the chair for your leadership over the last 2 years.
Yep.
I agree wholeheartedly with you that that mental health is if not the biggest issue that we as a board can help impact the community and understand how the police department is interacting with those in need of help. Because of that, I'd like to nominate Dr. Graywind to be the next chair. I think that her experience and background would make a perfect chair for what this board looks to do over the next several years.
All right. Would you like to discuss that further? I do agree with that. I think, Tanya, you would make a great chair. And I'm in favor of that. Discussion?
No discussion.
Anybody have any other people in mind for chair?
I think Tanya will do a fantastic job.
All right.
So you would ask for any other nominations, and which you did, but I wanted to make sure everybody had an opportunity to nominate further. And then you would close the nominations and make the motion for the appointment of the chair.
All right. Any other nomination?
None here.
Okay, so we have a nomination for Dr. Graywind to be chair moving forward. Are we in agreement to that? I mean, are we in favor?
So then somebody would make the motion to appoint Dr. Graywind as the chair. You would need a second and then a vote on that nomination.
I will formally recommend that Dr. Graywind be the next chair.
I second.
Second.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, motion's carried, and Dr. Graywind will be our next chair. We'll move on to vice chair.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Conrad Thomas as the next vice chair.
All right. Any discussion on that?
I'll second that motion.
Yeah. Okay. Think you would make a good vice chair?
Thank you.
You feeling good about that?
I believe so.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So all those in favor of Conrad
And
Thomas?
you would ask for any additional nominations
Okay.
prior to closing the nomination.
All right, any other nominations? All right, so it will stand that all those in favor for Conrad Thomas to be vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carried.
Sorry, you need to go back to the motion and the second for that. We don't
Okay.
have that
Okay.
documented.
So there was a motion for Conrad Thomas to be
Right.
vice chair of the board.
I second it.
I think, did Lucy, did you make that
Yeah.
motion then? And who was the second?
Okay, I'll officially make the motion for Conrad Thomas to be vice chair.
I second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Conrad, you are vice chair moving forward. All right, got that
Thank you.
stuff done. Next item on the agenda is the public comment period. And the next item, I just would say those who wish to address the Police Advisory and Oversight Board, use the sign-in sheet. You must state your name and are limited to 3 minutes. and they should not contain any profanity or personal attacks. Do we have anyone signed up?
Yes, we have 2 signed up. First would be Faith Dixon.
Either one.
Is that you? All right, we'll share. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Faith Dixon. I didn't prepare a speech because I do have a lot of anxiety when it comes to this topic, but I wanted you all to see this is what people in our community are facing. This incident happened last year on May 4th. I had a lot of trauma that came along with this. I wanted justice, and I'm still seeking justice for what happened. Fargo Police Department decided to put their hands on me and cause me harm. Chief Sabowski wants to talk about tonight about accountability. But again, how can the police police themselves? I'm an activist. Most of you all know who I am. I've been doing this with my brother Wes for 4 years, since the death of George Floyd. I've never been in trouble with the law. I was a good Samaritan that night. I saw a woman being beat up. I stayed around for Fargo Police Department to come, but instead, I was put in handcuffs. I was roughed up that night by Fargo Police Department. And now they want to hide behind a letter that says, oh yes, we should have never put handcuffs on you. But we didn't hurt you. Well, the evidence is right here. Sanford Medical Report, where I went to, clearly states the same thing. So I want justice. I'm not giving up. I'm not going to stop fighting for what is right. They cannot use and abuse their power, and that's what they're doing. I'm afraid that this is going to happen, and it's going to be worse for someone else. Just this weekend, I was downtown helping my husband and my girlfriend with their food cart. Fargo Police Department received a call or received something from somebody saying that there was an incident. I clearly saw this gentleman be walked home by Fargo Police Department. They walked this gentleman home, but then I was pretty much detained, put in handcuffs, but they walked this intoxicated man home. He came back downtown 10 minutes later to further harass me and other people. We had to scream for the police department to come down and assist us. But that night, Chief Zabowski, I was a victim. I did not cause any harm. I watched a crime being committed, but instead your officers felt that I was the one that caused it. And so they did this to me. You can't neglect this. This caused me a lot of physical pain, and I want justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another is Wes, I believe it's Philomel.
Wes Philome, he, him, his pronouns. I'd like to start by saying long live George Floyd and Onue Magic. 3 years ago, when me and Faith helped embark on creating this citizen-led police oversight and advisory board we had a vision for you guys, a vision that would see that you guys would be connected with our community, be a voice for our community, bring our community closer to our police department after the division that occurred after the murder of George Floyd. Years later, looking at the situation, I don't think that the community is anywhere near closer to the police department. If anything, I feel like we're further apart. You guys were supposed to be a voice for the community, but we don't feel like that's the case either. We had a town hall that occurred years ago. A ton of people showed up. What have we really had ever since to understand what the community feels or where they're coming from? And I think the biggest issue that I have is consistently seeing that anytime there is an explosive incident, the police department comes to you guys in order to validate themselves. And you guys on the fly are asking questions, but you're being given a presentation. Why aren't you guys receiving raw data, raw files, unencumbered access to information? Like, what opinion can you really form when the person you're supposed to be holding accountable is just giving you their side of the story? You all get cut up clips that removes a lot of stuff, and then you're expected to say, or to err on one side or the other. Where is the true involvement of the police, like you guys as an advisory board? Why aren't you guys asking, like, hey, can we get the full body camera footage, the full dash cam footage so we can look at it? David, I know you are phenomenal with that stuff. Why is it not happening? But all I'm seeing is the police department shows up, does a presentation. You guys get to ask a few questions. I could tell after the last meeting that you guys did not get the answers that you were truly satisfied with. And then we move on to another meeting and nothing else is picked up. This is not effective at all. And so with the change in leadership, my hope is that there's also a change in operation, that like we, the people, can have more confidence in this board and feel like you guys are actually working for us. Because if you're not working for us, as it stands for the last 3 years, you guys have been working against the community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, there's no one else signed up for public comment.
All right. Next item on the agenda was questions from the community members. And I think we had a couple questions about pulling photos up side by side in the squad cars. And I think there was another question on if the department was trained in diversity.
Yep. Thank you. So yeah, the questions from the community, they said, why can officers not look at mugshots side by side in the squad cars? And what we found is it's on the mobile dispatches, so like the computers that are in the squad cars or the programming that we use, it's limited so that you can't view them side by side. We did find a workaround in the records portion called LERMS. LERMS isn't easily used on the squad car MDCs either, but we are working on some workarounds for it. Right now, they're kind of limited because of the computers that are in the squad cars, but definitely come up with some different ways to do that. But currently, to do it simply, it's just limited to the abilities of the programming inside the squad cars.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I'm assuming this question from the community comes as a result of mistaken identity. Can you compare the two to make sure that you have the right person? Is that a common event? We saw the video situation where that was a mistaken identity. How often is that happening?
A mistaken identity? I guess I wouldn't have the raw numbers in front of me. I can only speak from my experience of 20 years of law enforcement and then working on our fugitive task force with the Marshal Service and the street crimes unit. Mugshots that you would say holding people or comparing them side by side are very difficult. I can go back to trying to identify an individual by just a mugshot is very difficult. We would stand in surveillance in plain clothes trying to watch individuals, and the mugshots that they show may appear to be somebody that you see. So if you do detain that individual or do a little bit more background work on it, you might find that they either are or they aren't. So it's very difficult to identify somebody like that. There are many other steps that go into it. I know in the incident that you're referring to, there was a procedure done that wasn't shown in the mugshot, so that would have been a difficult determiner there.
Sure.
I was going to put up a picture of me 5 years ago and me today, and they're drastically different, even if you go a year from now. So mugshots are just difficult to identify people by. We even look at when you do the photo lineups, they're questionable sometimes as to, is this the right way to do it? It's because it doesn't always look like that individual at the time.
Okay.
Any other questions about that? Okay. The next question was, what type of diversity or culture training do officers receive? And I did a couple slides. I won't go into great detail on them, but we do diversity and culture training in the academy along with implicit bias training. And then we have continued education with our Police One. I did actually teach the cultural training this last year in our academy, and these are our training performance objectives set forth by our post board. So they just talk about defining culture, the different groups within North Dakota, different ways to communicate with the different groups, foster and those which harm effective minority relationships, and then the diversity issues that we see. It was kind of a neat experience for me. I'm not completely diverse in all of the cultures like I could be, and actually sparked my interest in doing so. So we had some individuals that were from different parts of the country, different countries, and just different backgrounds within our academy, and we gave them opportunities to share their experiences on what it took to not only get to the country, but to maybe get to North Dakota from a different culture, or just be raised in a different city, and what that took to become a police officer here in the community. So it was really neat to get a different perspective from some of the academy students, and something we're going to incorporate. Another thing that we plan on doing that they've done in the past is forming a board of different individuals from different societies and cultures and present that at our academy. It was something that was done before, and I know, were you a part of it? And that was something that was very well received, so something I know that we're going to plan on bringing back. Just kind of the typical, what we went over within the academy is what is culture, and what we really focused on were individuals that are just from, say, the Midwest. It's something that we want to teach people, that different people from different areas of even North Dakota have different values and different ways of doing things. So we really try to touch on those different religions, different social backgrounds, and understanding that that all involves different cultures. So that's really kind of what we go through in the academy in a nutshell, and we do continued education. So Police One training, we have cultural and diversity training. So I did a quick search within their training modules that is available to all our officers, and these are a few of them that came up. So we do the implicit human bias, anti-bias training. We did send the department through it. I have to refer to Chief Zabowski. Was it 2 years ago where we had an individual come in and teach the entire department?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, which was really good training, eye-opening for a lot of people, and learned a lot from that. So these classes in here are refresher courses that you can pull up and go through if you have interest in it, or if you're a supervisor or somebody that feels that somebody needs some training in that area. I've watched a couple of them. They range from anywhere from 1 hour to 8 hours of training, and it's always pretty good. Another thing that we've come up with that we saw is kind of a missing gap within talking with Global Refuge, and they bring in a lot of the refugees to the FM area. And what we wanted to do is, after I had taught a couple of the classes, when you talk about bringing individuals in and explaining how it is that things may work around here, I noticed that people were taking a lot of notes, and kind of like our academy students drinking out of a fire hydrant, and they're trying to gather all this information. So what we came up with is the New American Contact Card, which could work for not just New Americans, but anybody that English isn't their primary speaking language. So in helping with them, you would put your name, spoken language, and phone number, address, and then emergency contact in there. So we'd be able to contact them. So then we can, if say they were stopped or a victim of a crime or even a suspect in a crime, we would have the language that they prefer to speak, and we can use our language line so that we can get an interpreter so that we can speak back and forth with an interpreter. We also decided to add a QR code. So if you scan this code, it'll bring you to the City of Fargo's Police Department webpage. And within that, if you're on a computer, there is a Google Translate in there that'll translate into approximately 75 different languages. And what we learned when we put on the class for the refugees is if you have a phone and you can set it to your preferred language, it will actually open that website and translate everything on it. So some of the other ideas that we're trying to come up with are different things to put on that webpage so that it can talk individuals through specific situations. So I don't know if that answered the question that was asked.
I think so.
Okay. Thank you. I think Chief is up next.
All right, the next item on the agenda is department updates. And we'll begin with Chief Sobolski to speak to his items. And thank you, Chief, for flying back today and being here at this meeting.
Absolutely.
Pardon me. Maybe before Chief Zabolski speaks, I would like to acknowledge the community members who came and spoke about concerns and issues. And I just want to tell them that their message and their words have not fallen on dead ears. I think sometimes it's important that we acknowledge certain concerns and showing them that, hey, we are there to listen and to take appropriate actions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. First update, our DC trip was very well received by all the members that went there. I think it was very beneficial for the families and the officers, kind of as part of that transition grieving process, but also honoring the service and sacrifice of Officer Willeen. And I just think for them to see that broader view at a national level was very therapeutic for everyone involved. And so from a wellness perspective, I think that's going to have a lot of positive outcomes. We did just get back this morning, and it went really well. So we appreciate the community support. That was obviously the main driver of us being able to send the amount of officers that we did out there, and so much appreciated on that. The other item that we had questions about was traffic stop demographics. And so for some time, we've been trying to electronically capture our data. And so for, well, probably a long time, our normal traffic tickets go through what's called TRACS, which is an electronic citation issuance system that's in each squad car. But there are some traffic tickets, criminal traffic tickets, like driving under suspension, driving while intoxicated, hit and run personal injury, things like that that are criminal in nature, that the officers still are writing in long form type of citation, which of course really made no sense. And we've been working for some time on trying to get all of our citations into that database so that we can pull all of that information. I spoke with Sergeant Estebo earlier today, and he thinks we're about 30 days from having that accomplished. So then all of our data would be in there and would be grabbable for comparable purposes. When that is done, the other thing we will do is then require written warning citations as well. So right now, when you look at our traffic data, our warnings are verbal and there's no written citation, which means we really can't track anything. And we've known that to be an issue as well for some time, but until now, until getting some technology and making some of these changes, we haven't been able to address that. So I think that's good news from that perspective, and that will at least provide that bounty of data. So if we can get this going in the next 30 days, we'll be able to start to acquire that. The other piece that we're working on, some of you may be familiar with the Police Data Initiative that was in play in early 2015 to 2020-ish, which was was part of the 21st Century Task Force report, but they actually had a group that trained police departments on how to aggregate that data and push it out on a website so that the community could look at it and aggregate it and look at it in different ways. I don't know if that's still viable. I have a message into the National Policing Institute, which had a piece of that as well. So once I get a response from them, if it is still viable, we'll get someone trained on that or someone in our IAU so that we can take the data that we have and then we can push it out on a monthly basis. And then you'll start to, you'll get annual data and all that kind of stuff relative to traffic stops. So I think that's very promising. And then the other thing, in terms of all of that, for everyone to understand that traffic stop demographics will not match population demographics. It's not a valid scientific metric for a variety of reasons. We've got, not everyone in the community drives. You have people that don't live in the city of Fargo that drive and are the subject of traffic stops. We've got 2 interstates going through town. Literally, there's thousands and thousands of people that don't live in the city. So the demographics won't match. Just like the demographics don't match on crime suspects. Information that we get from victims who tell us who the suspects are in their crimes, those don't match population demographics either for a variety of other reasons. So I just want that to be clear to everyone. But what it does do is give us data, oversight, and accountability in terms of whether there's complaints with stops, whether we identify trends with certain individuals who may be stopping individuals based on profiling or race. At least it gives us something to look at and work on. The other thing that affects this stat is where you work in the city, what neighborhood you work in. Obviously, if you work in a predominantly, area where there's a large race, you'll probably stop more of that race. But, again, it depends. And a lot of our folks are in many places, but there's a lot of components to that. So I just wanted to point out what we are doing in terms of grabbing that data for public consumption and also the efficacy of that data. What can that be used for? And I'm happy to take any questions on that.
I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
So the tracks software, that's used when it's just a typical traffic stop?
It's any traffic that's not criminal. And so there's certain charges that are criminal in nature, driving under suspension, driving under while intoxicated, and hit and run personal injury, and there's probably some others.
So when data is entered into tracks, are those stops within the tracks system, are
Yes.
they containing comprehensive demographic information?
Yes, it has to, all of the data fields have to be filled in or it won't accept the citation.
Okay, and then did I hear, I apologize, I just want to make sure I heard this, but sometime within the next 30 days, it sounds like all traffic stops will go into the tracks.
And not even just traffic, but we're hoping to have all city citations, marijuana possession, all the things that we handwrite citations for now, which is a huge inefficiency, doesn't make any sense for us. We hope to have all of those in the system, so everything's electronic, it's also readable, and we'd have data.
So middle of June.
That is our hope, so we'll hope to deliver that. I'll keep you updated.
Okay.
That's where we're at currently. And then I'm checking on the police data initiative, and I'm hoping that that's still viable because they actually provide that training. Otherwise, we'll have to figure out a way to do that.
So in your comment about data doesn't match demographics, can you expound on that a little bit? In what way would that be skewed one way or another?
Sure, because, people don't drive based on their racial demographics. Some people don't drive at all. Some people don't live in the city. So when you're using city demographics, how many people drive through Fargo that live in Minnesota? So again, the data is skewed in all those different ways. And scientifically, to have a valid metric, you have to have a benchmark. And so what that means is if you're looking at a particular area of the city and the racial demographics of anyone that was stopped, as a valid scientific benchmark, you would have to know the racial demographics of everyone that's driving in that area at that time to compare it to see if there is any kind of discrepancy. And that's what you would have to have for a valid scientific metric, which of course is not realistic.
If you I want to push back on that a little bit because I get that if you look at it from a micro standpoint, but from a macro standpoint, I don't understand why they wouldn't be similar to the demographic in the area.
Yeah, I can refer you to some research, but that's not me saying that. It's scientific research and validity and reliability of that information.
Yeah, I did actually look up several articles, journal-type articles on that, and there are quite a bit of nuances with tracking
So what would be the
this
what would be
data.
the bottom line? So what would that show? I mean, if we've got
Well, what it wouldn't show you is you couldn't, I'm sorry, were you done with your question?
I just wondered, how would the data, as we look, that doesn't match, how might we misunderstand that?
If you look at the data and you say, all right, Fargo is 8% African-American, but 20% of our traffic stops are African-American, therefore there's racism or bias, that would be an inaccurate assessment because those demographics will not match population demographics. There's no scientific metric to that. Just like the scientific metric for suspects in crimes in African-Americans do not match the 8% either. It's much higher. So that's the reason. And I can provide you with some of the research on that. And so but we're going to do it either way because it does give us more insight. And again, coupled with any complaints or any other analysis, it gives us a look into what's happening. Right now, we don't really know what's happening with traffic stops where we have warnings. So I think that's an important piece to be able to track that and have that data.
And I can also supply some of the articles I read on that, David, too.
I do have a quick question with your track system. You should be able to filter out non-Fargo addresses, correct?
It's still not valid because you don't know who's driving.
But that would give you a little better barometer of what kind of Fargo people?
I don't think so because we enter the data into the system and we get what's in the system without hand entry and going through all those tickets to siphon out who's not a City of Fargo resident. That would be pretty labor intensive. And again, to what end would that help us?
Chief, were those numbers 8% and 20%? Were those just random numbers or were those legitimate?
I'm just giving you random. I think 8% is, be 8.5% in Fargo, yeah.
Okay. But the 20% number was not
I just made that up.
Just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
The track system, I assumed, is used by police departments across the country?
I don't know about that. It's a system that the state has us, we enter citations into. It is used in other states, but I don't know if it's used in all states.
Does the Fargo Police Department have a local ability to manage its own database?
Not, the track system is a state system? State system.
Okay, so from a graphic interface, if you wanted to have different search fields, even to do some of this, to find out how close that 20% number was, if it was just a wild ass guess or if it was pretty darn close, if you didn't have that search interface, how you wanted it to do to pull that number, would you have to ask someone else to change that? Or would the Fargo Police Department be able to do that themselves?
We can't change the nomenclature of the database, but we can pull the data that's in it.
Okay. Do you feel that it's sufficient for what Fargo needs it to be? Or does that do we need to look at a different database management? Do we need to look at asking the state of North Dakota to change how the interface looks? Or I'm looking for your opinion or Fargo Police Department opinion on, is this sufficient for the issues we deal with here?
Well, I think in a broader perspective, and that's a good question, the state manages it. We can't really change that. Unless, yes, maybe you change the legislation and told them to go to a different database, which I don't know what the likelihood of that is. But in terms of are we capturing enough data? No, and not just in traffic, but in everything we do. And if you think about, especially our community and others, we've got about 10% foreign-born. We have ethnicities that, how do you track them? If you stop a car and it's an Iraqi, an Afghani, or a Bosnian, are they white? Are they African American? Are they? How do you count them? And you don't know those things, and you don't know those ethnicities. And there are also other folks who are black but might not be African American. They may be from Jamaica or other places like that. And so we're missing all of that ethnicity in the analysis. But the way that all the federal databases are set up, there's no component for that. And I think that would be also helpful because probably some of those groups just go into the white category, or maybe even are looked at as some other race, because the officer's trying to make an assessment. You can't really ask someone their ethnicity at a traffic stop, and so that there's always that piece of the pie as well.
Sure. And I understand the skeptical thought that it's probably not going to change. But from a board standpoint, that might be one of the things that we would advocate for. If the perception is that this database isn't working for the largest city in North Dakota, if it's not working for us, it's probably not working for any other city in North Dakota. And so I'm hoping to get a better understanding of, is this an issue that we want advanced, or do we think it's appropriate for what it is?
Well, I think, and I've actually talked to federal counterparts about this, because that's really where the change would have to likely start, because all of the databases come from federal government, and they set all that up, and the states follow that same nomenclature. But I mean, it's certainly worthy of more discussions. I've had discussions about it because I have those same questions. I like to be able to capture all these other areas, and how would you do that, legitimately, I guess, without, there's the sticking point of, okay, how do I determine your ethnicity, I guess. And so I think that's a fine conversation to have. If we can improve that, I think that's good.
Well, and I think it'll segue into the next conversation with the intelligence unit. Your information's only as good as the data behind it.
Right.
And so if it's not able to do what you want with it, it's going to give you bad assessments, bad perception, and decisions are made with less than. I understand decisions are always made with less than 100% information, but decisions are made then with faulty information sometimes.
Right. Well, and I agree. And each adding in these handwritten tickets and all these other things that we're missing are going to give us a much more robust database to look at, and a much easier way to pull that and put it out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree, there's that kind of limited, sometimes those check boxes, like African American, Native American, white, Hispanic. But I know a lot of people that don't fit any of those and always just click white because they're not represented in those choices, right?
Right. I mean, if they added them into
So
the
let me-
driver's license, that which would also have to be probably, I think it's a federal piece that the states follow, then we would know that information and we could track that. But it's not in there.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just kind of piggyback on Scott's observation. From what I'm hearing is this track system and all the data that you're collecting isn't a legitimate tool for judging whether or not minorities are stopped at a greater rate than not. And so if that's the case, what other tools do you use, or how will you evaluate that?
Sure. Well, let me correct your premise, because that's not exactly correct. It's not the track system. It is the use of population demographics compared to traffic stop demographics that is not a legitimate tool for analysis in terms of bias or things of that nature. So it doesn't matter if it's tracks or anything else. That's not population demographics. It's not a valid
Right,
scientific
so it's not
metric.
the software that's
Correct.
involved, it's the
Correct.
demographics.
But we would like to make our software more robust. I agree with that. I think that would be, I think that's helpful, again, from the whole transparency perspective and really just populating and showing that the diversity and the folks that are involved, that we stop or that are in our community.
So is your opinion that that this data doesn't match demographic. Is that prevalent throughout a lot of law enforcement jurisdictions?
Well, I think it's an issue for everyone because we all use the same, it's set up by the federal government. So you only have so many categories to pick from. So depending on where you are, you could be mischaracterizing some of that data. I mean, again, the officer's trying to make a judgment on race based off of, I think, 5 categories.
Sure. Do you have any other tools at your disposal that can help provide a legitimate rationale to understand if the diversity training, anti-bias training, all that is effective? How else can you judge it?
Well, we judge it by a lot of ways. Community feedback. We judge it in the fact that our department is diversified exponentially in the last couple of years, and we have people coming in for our interviews who actually say, the reason I'm applying here is because I feel that I'm accepted here. I see people from my ethnicity, culture, country on the department, and I'd like to join the department because of that. And we've had many, many people tell us that. And so we also look at in terms of complaints and the investigations of those complaints, so similar to the ones that you reviewed at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago. And there's a difference between following the law and misunderstanding about who somebody is. Again, a lot of those issues are solved by, first, if you're driving a vehicle, you're required by law to have a driver's license with you. If you got your driver's license, we don't have to guess who you are, right? So, there's things on both sides here that would help eliminate some of those issues. But in terms of the tools, we have the tools that we have.
I think we could probably talk for another 3 hours on just this subject. So my recommendation is that we continue the conversation at another meeting, just to make sure that we can get through the agenda.
Yeah. I think you still have some
Correct.
items you're going
Yep,
to talk
I'll
about.
I'll do, okay, so CRYTAC update, we're still working on a critical response review, and I did follow up with them relative to the use of force policy review. They are going to have someone, and we're working with them to get another person to do that. In reading the work plan, it seems to me that the use of force policy would be included in there because it's part of the review, but they wanted to have this group focus on the critical responses as a whole and have a different, like SME, look at the use of force policy. So we're working through that with CRYTAC right now to get that person lined up. So we'll have that last piece. And when we have the completed critical response overview, which I think is the broader of the reviews, when we get that report out, we'll certainly provide that to the board and see what if any recommendations are in there and have that discussion.
I've got a couple questions on that too.
Sure.
So originally, use of force as it relates was not within the scope of the project. And I was told that on 3 separate occasions. And so now I'm encouraged because, am I correct? You're saying that they are enlisting the support of another SME, and now use of force is a part of the project.
That's what we've asked them to do, but it's going to be separate from this project.
So it'll be a whole new project?
Yes, there'll be a different person doing that review. And we don't have a final answer, but I'm fairly confident they will do that for us.
Okay. Any other questions on CRYTAC?
Well, do we know the length of time that, it took 14 months to find SMEs for the current project, and is it going to be a lengthy time again?
I don't know, but to be honest with you, this first report will be the most in-depth. The review of the policy is not as difficult, I guess, for someone to look at and provide feedback. So I can't tell you how long it will take them to assign someone or what their work schedule is. but hopefully that'll happen quickly. But again, this larger view of all these incidents, I think, is going to be more comprehensive in terms of everything that we do, response, SOP, policies, that kind of stuff. And there is a use of force review component in the first plan. That's one of the policies that they were looking at, which is why, my opinion, I don't know how they cut out use of force from a critical incident review, but apparently that's what they did in their evaluation of what they should do. So we'll fix the other part, but this larger piece is going to give you a lot more information.
Well, I think it's going to all be good information. I'm profoundly disappointed because the reason that we talked about the collaborative forum review was specifically around use of force, and to find out that that wasn't even a part of it was really disappointing.
Yeah, I had the same understanding when they said they were looking at related policies related to critical incidents. One of them specifically use of force review. I don't know how you separate those two, but either way, we'll fix it. So.
All right. Any other questions?
Just one question. We've got a presentation. We've got about 9 minutes. Would it be wise to reschedule so that how long is your presentation, Lieutenant? Probably 40 minutes. Yeah. So we have 40 minutes of presentation. And I'm sure there'll be questions also, I would imagine.
Yeah. Or would you be willing to come back and give this presentation? Are you guys okay with that? I mean, it would be nice to actually have the time to hear it
Absolutely.
and ask the questions appropriately, right?
Yes.
And we've been wanting to have this on the agenda, right?
I don't know, do we have a community event scheduled for June, or is, I don't know off the top of my head what we have scheduled for next month?
No, we don't have a community event at this juncture.
Okay.
So this would be fine.
Roll it into the next meeting on the agenda? Okay. I'm good with that.
Are you guys okay with that? Rolling it in so we have more time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I could ask for a motion to continue that item from the agenda because you
Table
are
it.
amending the agenda.
I will move that we table the item on the agenda till next month.
Second.
All those in favor to table the item to the next agenda, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carried. It goes to the next meeting.
Okay. And if you want, I can update you on one other item, as long as we got just a couple minutes here. Also, that's, we'll be participating in what the National Police Institute, a sleep study. So they'll be in next week explaining the study to our personnel and do an actual pretty in-depth study on sleep patterns and things of that nature on up to 30 of our officers. So that, I think, will be a pretty significant study that the department's participating in that might help inform some of our operational decisions, but also identify more healthy things for the cops to do, both from diet to sleep and what those patterns are. So just so that you're aware of that, it's another initiative that's coming in.
Yeah, thank you. I think that making sure we're sleeping, we make better choices and have less accidents. So it's kind of a pinnacle. Is there any other business? No? Any other business? No? Okay. All right, well, hearing none. This meeting of the Police Advisory.
1 second. Go ahead.
Yeah, just looking real quick, I believe the chairs then will take office at the next meeting.
Yeah, yes, right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. You're meeting with the chief next month, right?
So agenda, right, so agenda setting,
We'll be with,
Tanya and Conrad, we will send you that
Tanya.
notice, yes.
yep.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. Well, the meeting of the Police Advisory and Oversight Board will stand adjourned, and our next meeting is scheduled for June. Sorry, I didn't write the date down today. I think it's
June 13th.
13th? All right, June 13th at 5, thank you.